All right. Hey guys, welcome back to a new video. Today I'm going to be explaining how friction works and how you can make it in Scratch. It's actually pretty simple, so this video might be a little bit shorter than usual. So I'm just going to get to it as quick as I can. So basically, if you don't know what the definition of friction is, and I'm surprised if you don't. Basically, friction is what prevents any object in like the entire universe from sliding and flying everywhere. So when you run or when you walk, the friction prevents you from sliding around and slippery everywhere all over like ice, you know? So it prevents you from sliding everywhere. In order to emulate this on Scratch, I'm going to show you an example of no friction. If I were to make this thing go in a if I were to make this follow my mouse pointer and move at 10 steps per frame, it does what it's told, It does what it's told. Now, let's stop the project. Let's get a if space is pressed, so that way every time I hold space, it follows it. But notice how when I let go of the space bar, it stops, and that's what it's supposed to do. But there's not actually any friction. It sets itself to a certain speed, and then immediately stops once the space bar is pressed. A good way to add friction is actually pretty simple. Let's make a variable, and for this we'll name it velocity. Right. What we're gonna do when we first start is we're gonna set the velocity to 0. Um, so yeah. Then instead of moving steps, we're going to stop the project, and we're gonna move it by velocity steps. Now, if we were to start the project now, oh, got a little malfunction. Sorry. Let's see what I did here. Oh, I am smart. All right, that was my mistake. That was my mistake. So if I were to start the project, instead of moving, instead of having friction, it just slides everywhere. Like I said, it slides like ice. If we want to stop that, we get the velocity variable, and let's actually delete this so that way I don't get confused. We get the velocity variable, the multiplication times the multiplication thing, and in the first slot we put the velocity variable. In the second slot we put 0.7, and then let's put that in there. And for this, let's set the velocity by 3. So if we were to go to the middle, again, let's set our coordinates back to the middle. It's aka 0, 0. And now when I start, it starts off slow, but gets a little back. It gets up to that speed that I asked for. But when I stop, it slowly goes down. And that's friction. So basically, the lower we were to set this to, so you all know that 0 times any other number is equal to 0. So basically, with that knowledge, the lower the number goes, the more intense the friction becomes, basically. Um, it's actually pretty easy. If I were to increase it, say 0.9, and then let's restart, then it slip and slides everywhere, but it still has that type of friction that you can still notice. See, it slows down eventually. But if I were to set this to 0.3, you can barely notice it because of how intense the friction actually is. So yeah, let's make a better example of this. I'm going to remove all of these, and instead what we're going to do, I'm going to get the change x and the change y, and we're going to make two separate variables. Let's rename this one x velocity, and make a new one y velocity. And let's set both of these to 0 when we start the project. Let's also make change y by y velocity and change x by x velocity. And for the controls, I'm just going to make them arrow keys. You can change these to anything you'd like. Don't forget to add the velocity, the set velocity to set the x velocity to times 0.7, and then do the same for the y. There you go. Now, if we want, let's set if right arrow is pressed, change the x velocity by 2. Let's duplicate it. If left arrow is pressed, change it by -2. Basically, negative numbers. I think I've already explained this before, but negative y is down, negative x is left, positive x is right, positive y is up. Remember that. So if I were to start the project, he has friction and he moves to the left and right. Now let's do the same thing for the up and down. Like I've said before, or like I've said a couple seconds ago, up and down is y, which is the vertical axis. So for down, we said it's a negative y. We said it's a negative 2, sorry. And for up, we said it's a positive 2. Let's put that in there. And as you can see, we now have a fully functioning movement engine. You could set, if you wanted to, you can make a new variable called player speed or any type of speed that you want. Put it inside here. If it's a negative number, you times it by -1, so that way it converts to a negative number, and that way you could put it so that you can set this player's speed to, anything you'd like. And yeah, that's basically how friction and velocity works in Scratch. Hopefully this video helped you guys. And yeah, take care.